Information Management. Mr. Bayinka Olufemi Oladimeji is a fellow of Digital Information Management, and he has over 20 years experience in information and data management. He used to be a data analyst. So not to waste much of our time, I would like to hand over the section to the speaker. After the speaker is done, we will take a poll question. We will take questions from the audience. Then we will take some introduction by Executive Council members. Then we will close the training. So, Mr. Bayinka, over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Good evening, everybody. Senior fellows, CDOs, associates, students, friends. I know most of us are here today to either learn or to add comments based on the long experience you also have had in the industry or on data and information classification, and also to just inquire. Well, this is a learning process for every one of us. Nobody knows it all, especially when it comes to information technology, because we have new policy standards and laws coming out every day. So this is just a premise. That's why we call it basics. It is not complicated, straightforward, and from there you can develop your own ideas. It helps you to think, sensitize yourself, and think about how you can actually take your organizations and either private or public sector forward, because it's the same policy all over the world. So I'll be laying the premise now, and I'll start with basics of, as you can see, our topic today is basics of data stroke information classification. So what is it saying? What are the premise? Why do we have data information classification really? I mean, what are the basics for that happening? Who instigated it? How is it initiated? Well, these are some of the things that we will learn together here. The table of content was prepared, and it was based on the flow of our conversation. So we're going to definition of terms, differences, what is, what types, steps and consideration to doing this in your organization, basic data classification that we have out there, which is not restricted or limited, importance of the classification of your data, and the challenges some people face. And then we conclude, and then we can ask questions. The question is open not just to me. I am just the carrier of this process, but there are more experts in the house who will answer from Institute of Information Management. So data and information, because it is basics of data stroke information. So people will wonder, is it the same thing? Is data, is it information? Are they similar concepts? Are they not the same? As you have seen here, the main difference between both is not really, it's a lot, but yet it's so tiny. Data is just a part and information is whole. For example, look at this CSV file here. Looking at the data population here, maybe it's imported from somewhere, I don't know, but nobody will understand this. But then if you structure it properly on the left-hand side, a table was created, the table has headers, and therefore based on the table definitions, you know that Roman name is Diamond, the modern name is this, the county is here, the year is here. So the data is just there as growing seeds. And then when you cook them together to make good food, then you understand the information behind it. And they said today, data is the new oil. This was actually mentioned today by a senior colleague and someone in government. That data is the new oil, and by the time he explained it, I understood. Data is the new black gold, because today, even if I don't have to explain it, looking out there, if you have more data in your database, they will come to you to partner, to buy, to merge. The same is going for Twitter, which is going to be purchased for 44 billion naira. The same is going for YouTube, which was purchased for 1.6 billion naira. The same goes for Instagram, that was purchased for, I think, 2.6 or 26 billion naira. So these are information environment. Data is like, they are collecting data. This data will be interpreted into trends. The trends will be interpreted into forecasts. And you have insights into the data and they mine the data properly, they will get information. So this information becomes very expensive. The most thriving organizations in the world today, it's not really because of what they sell or profit, it's the information behind it. Amazon, Meta, which is Facebook, and all the other social media, TikTok, it's not because of the show or the dancing, it is because of the information behind it that makes it so much expensive than even motor cars industry, agriculture, or any other industry that we have today. So this is where information technology is going. So now that we know the value, or we put value on our data, how do we now make it more beneficial to us? So the first question I will probably ask myself or anyone else is, what is data? Data is just raw, organized, unorganized, unrelated, uninterrupted material which is used to derive information for analysis, which is what I mentioned earlier. People can capture data from any part of the world in any language without knowing what it means. But by the time it's incorporated and analytics is set in, and you run some scripts to understand, you understand the data will make much more sense and understand the lives. For example, Google and others have the trends of how much you spend every day. They have about what you like best, what you like to see, where you'd like to travel. They have all that information about individuals. And because of that trend, they can actually go ahead of you into the future and forecast what you are going to buy. And they sell this data to commercial environments and public enterprises. So essentially, data is plain facts, observation statistics. It can be characters, it can be symbols, it can be images, numbers, and more that are collected and can be used for analytics. So I say here, data left alone is not really very informative in that sense. It is relatively meaningless, but it gains purpose and direction after it has been interpreted to derive your requirement, your significance. For every environment, the data requirement is different. Now, this drawing at the bottom right-hand corner, in the data aspect, you see a phone number. You see a number, actually. It does not make sense to you. But really, when you convert it to information, this is somebody's number, which you can be interact with, we can buy from. That's why you are looking for so many numbers or email address just to get information. So it on the data on its own can make no sense, but that does not really mean it's not important. And what is information? Information is now the set of data that has already been processed, analyzed, structured in a meaningful way to become useful. Once the data is processed, it gains relevance. It becomes information that is reliable, certain, and useful. And I can garner this from some of my own experiences where we have worked, we are very much involved in total records management with organizations, and we have sat down with CEOs and MDs and IT consultants and directors. And you realize that they have this so much data, but really it does not make so much sense to them if we do not collate with them, sit down with them, form policies, retention policies, classification policies, whatever kind of policies that is required for proper records management to be in place. So according to Forbes article, information is prepared data that has been processed and aggregated and organized in a more human-friendly format that provides more text. So the reference below, you see the URL. So what are the differences? Now that we understand what data is, I mean, fully data is just a subset of information. Data put together makes an information in a sensible manner. So what is the differences? Data is a collection of facts. Information is how you understand those facts in context. Data is unorganized, but information is structured and very organized. Information is uncountable now, a lot, uncountable now in one. Data is a mass of now, individually they are announced, collectively they become uncountable now. Data is not typically useful on its own, as we said earlier, but information can be and is. Data generally includes raw forms of numbers, statements, characters, information. And most of us who have worked in, like I said, analytics and also database environment or data cleansing environment, all this, or collecting data, or even in the registry, there's some information that you see that are part of, that are not complete and don't make sense. But when you now bring them together, they now make sense. So information actually depends on data that is collected. So the value of the information is based on the value of the data that we have. So what is data and information classification? Where did that come from? Why do you have to classify data? Why do you have to classify your information? Why don't you just write it, send it, store it, collect it? Which is what happens in some terrains today. We don't value the information and data that we have. If we do that, we might, especially when you have a population, density that's quite high. The data classification policies that we put in place will actually make that data value, very important. As I said earlier, I personally have worked in an environment whereby foreign governments, foreign NGOs have come to want to work on our data in different aspects of government, and they were turned off. They know the value, we also know the value, and we know the importance of our data. Therefore, we might not do anything about it right now as much as we want to, but it will get to that point where the data is available to harvest. So data classification or information classification is actually the process of classifying corporate information. And when I say corporate, I'm talking about the public and the private sector. Could be small business, could be medium-sized business. It's actually an environment where data is used. So that's a corporate environment. So information, where they classify corporate information into significant categories to ensure critical data is protected. In another way, you can classify it as the process of analyzing structured or unstructured data and organizing it into categories based on file types, contents, and other metadata. As I mentioned earlier, the first one applies to laws, restrictions that have been put in place, policies by organizations, NDPR or GDPR, and all others. The other one is where you, based on your environment, your company, your organization, your registry, you determine how you yourself work on classification definitions and put that definitions in place based on your environment and unique environment and what you do. And then they can also say it's a systematic grouping of units according to their common characteristics. This you will find in departments where you have HR, they have their document classification, legal department, they have theirs, financial, they have theirs, etc., etc. Now, so now that we know what is the classification of data, now what are the types of data information classification? Actually, there are so many, but the three most public, most used ones are: one, content-based classification. And this is the approach where it probes, give me a second. Okay, so please, can you hear me? Hello?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good.
Loud and clear. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, because it showed the sign. Okay, it showed the sign that my internet is unstable. So, as I was saying, you have the content-based one, which I defined as sensitive, personal, confidential information that which then determines the appropriate classification. You will know it when you're as a professional, you will actually know it. And this thing comes to you if you're structured in your ways. Then you have the context-based, where documents are classified based on location, who created it, the application of the data. And here I put for an examples of financial healthcare software environment, or rather an environment where, for example, we work with public sectors, and most people also work in the public sector. And we have branches or annexes, and even the private environment. They have, so their documents can be classified based on the location, based on the creator, etc. And you have the user-based classification, which is the simplest one. It's just manual human-generated classification policy, where one person decides how to classify the data. User-based data is heavily reliant on personal discretion and the employee's knowledge of data. So in this environment, this happens mostly in private environments or school education systems, but not necessarily in public or intelligence environment. And that is because their data might be different, and they want to classify it based on how they understand it and how it works for them at that particular point in time. That does not mean there will not be phases or releases in the future when things change, because data is not static, information is not static. So therefore, these things change on a regular basis. And that's why even when we have data classification, we must have champions of departments of public sectors who make sure that these standards and guidelines are monitored and followed on a regular basis. Now, steps, what are the steps? What do you consider now when you classify your data? It moves from either from your information governance that have been put in place to information security. And in between that, when you develop a risk assessment, logic or matrix, and use that to determine where your documents lie in terms of categorizing them, how important they are. You develop a formal classification policy for your organization. You categorize data types, either based on department, branch, usage, etc., importance. And then based on location, of course, where is this data based? Is it a cardinal branch? Is it this branch? Is it here? Is it the military? Is it Navy? Is it Army? Is it, it depends. And then you use this to identify, and once you get all these discovery elements in place, you now use it to identify and classify your data. And then you look at the security controls. You are moving towards now classified data, the security of this data. How secure, how important are they to you? Legal data, financial data, sensitive data. And then you enable the security control that you put around this data to protect them. And then you now sit and monitor and maintain. And this is where you have governance, standards, guidelines that you put in place. In fact, in some environment that I have been, as an onboard, when you onboard a new, at HR, when you onboard a new staff or employee or student, even in schools, uni, they give us pamphlets, they give us policies, they give us procedures, standards and guidelines. But when you get in, which you have to study your first week, that allows you to understand how we do things here and how our data preference is important to us. So, as I said, you complete a risk assessment, ensure clear understanding of the organization's regulatory, contractual, privacy and confidential requirements. Define your data classification objective through an interview-based approach. So you can sit down with the key stakeholders, you can sit down with compliance, most importantly, audit, legal, and the unit leaders, and the project assurance team and the project team to understand how you best to classify data. Also, you can develop a formalized document classification or information classification policy. You have to resist the urge to get too granular because then you are having about 20-something classification of your documents, and this is now confusing, and it has defeated the objective of classifying your data. So it tends to cause confusion and become unmanageable over time. And so 3 or 4 classification categories are reasonable. You solidify employee roles and responsibility. Policies and procedures should be well defined, aligned with sensitivity or specific data types, meaning you understand the sensitivity of your data type and then you apply it, and easily interpretable to your employees. Nothing complicated, keep it simple, case. Also, there are some people, these are some steps that some put together, 6 steps to data classification. You define the objective, which some of them I've mentioned earlier, categorize the types of data, create a workflow based on how they will use that data and how you approach going about to classify the data. There'll be structured in place for new people. Please, can you put off your mic? Now, you define the categories, define the outcomes and usage of what you want to use it for, how the outcome, the end game of why you're classifying data. And then, as I said earlier, you monitor your data. Now, the basic of data, maybe, should we wait for you to complete or should I continue? So the basic of data classification is, there are different schemes. It's not restricted. For example, one of the most popular is what you see here in front of me. In the intelligence community, governments like Nigeria, US, the whole world really, they have ways of classifying intelligence data. I mean, it might be more than this, but this is the basic, the top secret. You will see it on my phone. Secret. Sorry. Please, can the moderator mute all mics, please? So the secrets, the classified as secrets, confidential, and unrestricted or unclassified. These basics here are just, as I said, the basics of data. This is one of the schemes that is used. There are so many, and you can develop yours as well. Each category should also, in the corporate environment, each category should detail the type of data that is included, along with the guidelines for handling that particular data. It makes it easy on the eye. And then the potential risk associated with compromise. These are supposed to be placed on notice boards within the organization, offices within the organization, the definitions of your data structure and your data classification. These ones are the simple ones that we always have in emails and in environments. Once your policy has been completed and communicated, end users should classify all newly created and recently accessed data from that day forward, before turning their attention to back files or legacy data in place. Going forward, you need to now follow this instruction. Back data can be dealt with. And you have the most popular ones, as I said, is the public data. Data that might be freely disclosed to the public. You have internal only. And as I said, in some organization, when they send out email, that email would have a term at the top of it that will say, this is meant for internal usage only. Or they will say for external. When you get email from embassies, from governments, you will see those kind of information, confidential information, which are sensitive data that when compromised could negatively affect operations of the organization. And contracts with vendors can be part of that, employee reviews, etc. And then you have the restricted information. These are high sensitive corporate data that even if compromised can put organizations into financial or legal risks. This could do with, this could have to do with intellectual property, credit card information, social security, NI, NIN number, BVN, etc., etc. So these are the most popular schemes, but it is not restricted to this, and it's not set in stone, as I said earlier. And as we move forward, especially now that data is becoming and information is becoming very valuable in the economic, in countries, there will be further drill down to make sure that information, and that is why last 2018, the GDPR came out, Nigeria came out 2019 with NDPR, marketing information regulation came out in the world, whereby every trade that is carried out in the world, before when you carry out a trade in the markets, you can do Mr. and Mrs. You can do a group, but now if there's a Mr. and Mrs., the MIFLD and all of that financial law states that each person, individual, should have a role in an Excel spreadsheet on the data that is trading their data of their individual information, even if they're husband and wife. But even when they have common information, it must be one person, a unique individual to a unique ID. So this is because data has been now seen to be so much important that it is now breaking down, drill down even more. So people can, so going forward, there will be a lot of changes, there will be a lot of updates, and the more that we have different cyber attacks and data attacks, denial of service on different websites, we will continue to have more restrictions put in. Importance of data and information, information clarity. What is the importance? Why would they do it? Well, number one, it eases the access to data or information. Data must be searchable and retrievable within a specific time frame. Data classification makes data easily located, retrieved, changes easily traced. And I can give you a sample from my personal experience. You must probably have your own experiences. We work with some pensions and organizations, and we see people sit outside for days. Now, by the time you move in and work on the business process automation, you move on the classification of the data and retention policy and put all these things in place, and you digitize their documents. Immediately, files that takes 3 days, to find where people are sitting outside, now takes 3 seconds, because you just enter their names and data, and it brings out every information, and you now have to make sense of the file of the information on behalf of your client. Data security. It secures sensitive data against data theft and data breaches, and track regulated data. There's audit in place. Also, it actually secures sensitive data and determines the sensitive data against unsensitive data, and therefore determines how you now value and use the data. Efficiency. There's efficiency in business. The businesses that have this classification are able to manage and deliver day-to-day operations efficiently. And this is the truth. MDs of companies, CEOs, CTOs, presidents, they all carry now smartphones, smart pads. They carry their laptops with them. Why? Because they have access to ready-made real-time information that they require for their purpose. And so that is efficiency in business and in performance and then in productivity, really. So this is very important. And it creates awareness of cyber risk. I remember the Millennium 2000 attack I was a database DB at the time, and I know what we went through to make sure we keep in-house our servers, our proxy servers, etc., to secure our data and the disaster recovery and the business continuity we have to put in place and compliances. So it creates awareness for the whole organization to understand the risks involved if data is lost. If you carry your public laptop out of the offices, what you must guard against, etc., etc. So these are some of the reasons why it is very important. Benefits that I get from this. Number one, it improves data security, as we mentioned earlier. Once you understand the value of your data, you know how to secure it. You know what is important to secure, what to make public. It raises awareness, as I said earlier, and then it supports regulatory compliance. And even this regulatory compliance have actually allowed us to be able to structure and classify our data, even if we don't know this. I mean, as I said earlier, NDPR, the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, Data Protection Bill that's in place. The ISO standards that we already have, GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation in the foreign environment, SABANS also in the financial environment, and MIFID, NHIPA as well, an auditor, whatever environment. So all these have been placed in place to even help us see the importance and make sure that we actually sort our data for our own sake. It boosts business operations efficiency and lowers business risk. Of course, when data is classified, you know what data you apply yourself to. You know what data you send out by email. You know data you are not supposed to send out by email, etc., etc. Without the government, without the management telling you to do that. And then it limits dissemination. How does it disseminate? It limits the amount of information that goes out. It limits false information being sent out. And therefore, you get the right information at the right time that is required. Nothing more, nothing less. Excuse me. And the challenges that some organizations face, it can be expensive and cumbersome to put in place. It's not really too expensive. It might be cumbersome, but it has to be done. I guess the cumbersome, which is the time part, and time is money, makes it expensive. But it can be cumbersome. But once it is achieved, you can even bring in an expert. Once if it's achieved, or send people on training, once it's achieved, it boosts productivity, and it actually helps your organization to move forward properly. Poor execution can lead to streams of data security and breaches and privacy failures. Yes. Today, it is very hard to see our own websites in this part of the world to make sure that they force or enhance or make sure that data privacy is followed to the T. Therefore, every organization must have a data privacy. Every information that you use about this person, that person, if you're using it for public purposes, you must have data privacy laws that people can read to know what you're going to do with their information. But if you don't have this in place, then there's poor execution, which is data security, wasting of data, losing of data, keeping of people's data, and privacy is entrenched, or people's privacy are now matched upon or affected. So it's very important. Other reasons I mentioned that is not here is that the integrity of the organization, it will be called or questioned in certain areas of projects if they don't have a proper structured classification of their information. When you're working with an organization, especially now that we have the internet, now that we have cloud, now that we have a global environment. I mean, I personally put my information when I was running something in the cloud through a company that I was working with. They put it in the cloud. I was running a search years later, and I saw the same article that I put down in public domain, whereas it should be in the cloud. So, these are some of the failures that we have when we don't have privacy laws, public classification or document classification in place. It affects security and it breaches security, therefore affecting the integrity of that organization or maybe a data center cloud environment. In conclusion, there are 5 basic steps to better data classification policies. But this is not, as I said, set in stone. These changes are made, updates are made on a regular basis. But the main ones I want to concern myself with, 1, you define your objective. Why are we doing this? how does this compliance apply to my organization? What will it do if we do this? Why? Define the reasons why you want to have it. If not, if you don't define an objective, then you're defeated our objective of doing it in the first place and time wasting. So you must define the objectives. Why do we have to do this? How does it benefit us? How does it benefit our clients? How does it benefit our organization? Then you cannot go ahead to categorize your kind of data. What kind of data do we collect? How do we classify this data? How do we structure them? How do this data benefit us? How do we put value on this data? Each one of these classifications, that in the future it will be a source of income for us, or rather, if not income, if it's security data, then how will we be known that when they give us this data, it does not go anywhere? Then you create some sort of workflow based on your data discovery tool. So once you have put all this discovery in place, you now create steps based on how you tend to this and make sure it happens when the new data comes in. Who is it? Audit? Is it compliance? Is it legal that looks at it and says this document should be placed in this part of classification? Put that tool in place so that there's continuity, and you identify this process and to scan and to discover. That allows you to scan and discover new data when new data comes in. And then you define the outcomes and the usage of the classified data. When it comes in, identify how to organize this data collectively, how to use it to make business decisions, the business decisions going out to bring value to the organization, either financially or through integrity or growth. Then you monitor and maintain it. Once you have put all these steps in place, you must have someone in charge. Either if it's department, you can put in department champions, departmental officers, audit officers, compliance officers, data compliance officers can be defined and given roles. It can be part of somebody at HR's job, other people, legal's job. Now they continue to classify data, discover data, new data, and ensure the sensitivity of data is being protected. And then that your organization remains in compliance. In fact, I know some organizations right now, while they are working on their data transformation in terms of digitalization, right now, they are actually working on audit and classification, audit and compliance level, bringing in ISO organizations to get the job done. So, and in the same way, so that they monitor and how they maintain their data. This is the end of my this topic, basics of data and information classification. These are some of the references that I have taken this information from, and these references are much more comprehensive than what I have itemized or put together. If this can be sent to you by IIM, and you can actually build on it for your organization. And you can get in touch with IIM also to actually take you further. IIM has a pool of experts in record management, in structure, in policy, in privacy, and they advise governments and private institutions. So they can be part of the tool and resource that you can use, in terms of CSR in some cases, or pro bono job, to help you organize and structure your data. But that is just my own idea. It is not given to me by IIM, or I'm just saying. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope that you have learned, and I hope that I will learn from you if you have questions. The questions is open to the floor, not just me. I am just called to moderate this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Opayinka. Thank you for that presentation. Thank you so much. That was a very detailed one. So please, if you have any questions, we can put it up on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself, raise your hand up on the raise hand button, so we know if you have any question for Mr. Opayinka Olufemi, please. Yeah. Sorry.
There's a question from OAT Resources Agency and also from Mr. Kayode Oni. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Just introduce yourself. Okay.
So go ahead. Introduce yourself. Let us know. Then you ask your question. We have at least we have like 30 minutes more to end this session. Please. So go ahead.
Good evening, everyone.
The chat box as well.
Good evening, everyone. I'm
Good evening, sir.
Mohamed Mustafa Yusuf, the Chief Consultant of OAT Resources Agency. Well, I have commended the speaker through the chat box, and I don't think, without flattering you, I don't think we can have a session better than this. Having said that, quickly, how do we easily overcome the challenges? Because when you, during your presentation, you also highlighted some challenges that one we encounter when trying to classify information or data. How best or how easily can we overcome them? That's one. Two is that this classification of information and data, what is the correlation between it and the sources of the data? Because you'll agree with me that data, there are types of data. We have primary, we have secondary, and we have tertiary data. My understanding is that data that are from secondary and tertiary sources might have been classified. If there's contrary opinion to that, I would like to know. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm sure it's open to all of us, but how best, your question was, and also let me just clarify this, there will be better presentations. There will be much more better presentations that will bring, the highlight what is important, and I'm sure. But thank you so much, sir. Your question was, how best, what is the best way that we can classify our data? Am I right, sir? And that there's already been a primary and secondary tertiary classification policies in place.
No,
data, information. Please go on.
No, what I'm saying is that you, a part of your presentation deals with challenges.
Okay, yes.
Challenges of data classification, and so how best can we overcome them so that it doesn't limit our chances, or it doesn't discourage us from doing that?
Yes.
That's the first question.
Yes. I mean, different organizations have different challenges. It's either incompetence, and I'm not saying it in a bad way. I hands up when I know I don't know something. Anything out of biochemistry and computing, which I studied a while back, I don't know anything at all. So I don't know so much about legal. So same thing. One, out of incompetency, it could be the challenge. Therefore, it is very important. Right now, there are so many courses going about on records management and optimization of records management, et cetera, classification, which data information classification is a subset of that. So number one way to overcome this is to educate yourself, either through your internet education or through going on trainings. That's one of the ways that you will overcome the challenge. Are you getting me, sir? That's one of the ways I would think. Number two, within the organization, you might find out that the way the documents are structured is actually completely different from the way other people are structuring their data. But as long as you have the foundation that we have put in place, public, internal only, confidential, etc., classified, once you have all this information and you understand the meaning of them, then it can, as I said, it can be cumbersome, but you can also sit down with an expert, which is the easiest form, to take you through who has even more knowledge in this particular area as a subject matter expert. Not just record management, but classification, policies, standards. And then they will sit down they're all over the place. They will sit down and they will take you through it without you losing any head, without you having any or losing sleep in terms of trying to know, because you have your core competence, you bring the experts who have the core competence in place, and they will take you through it without, taking your hair out. If you cannot afford that, the internet is available for you to understand. You can get in touch with people like us or the IIM, who will send you the kind of information that you require to overcome the challenges. But I cannot answer because every organization, every individual has their own different challenges. But the way of approaching these challenges, what I've just laid down, competency improvement, or so speaking to subject matter experts within the organization or outside. If anybody has any other thing to add, please feel free. Thank you. Does that answer your question, sir?
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's Victor Boralo. Victor Boralo, Ottawa coordinator.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. I think we can hear you.
Victor Neye Boralo. Ottawa
Welcome,
coordinator.
sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I don't have much question to ask. Just that the webinar was okay by me, and I will suggest whether we can get the soft copy of the webinar after this webinar. That's my question.
Oh, thank you, sir. That is up to IIM. They would. I'm sure IIM knows what that's information. It's our institute. Our president and the team will know how to go about and getting the information required to every attendee. So yes. They can say something here. If our president is here or our coordinators, they can actually answer this question better than I do.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Can I ask my question now?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mr. Olufemi, for this fine presentation. Okay. My question is still centered around classification.
Okay.
In one of your slides, I noticed where you mentioned about a classification for data that can be like maybe top secrets and secrets, unrestricted, and all that. So now, since we can have data that can be unstructured, that I don't know the format, will it still be necessary to have this classification for such data? That's one. Then two, since we can also have some of this unstructured information, back into like information that will be contained in the document that can be classified properly, will it not just be okay to just classify those information that will be on the document rather than the data that is not structured? That's just my question.
Okay, sir. Please, you have to ask me number 2 again once we answer number 1, and anybody has a comment, please, so I can understand it properly. But what you are saying is that your question was, if it's an unstructured data, how do you really classify it if it's unstructured? Am I right?
Yeah, that will it be necessary? Like you don't know how the data is format here. Okay. So will it be necessary to now have this kind of classification for top secret, confidential, for something that is not?
Yes.
Until it's converted to a structured one before.
Yes. Okay. Are you there?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Now, first of all, when we were having this definition, I did mention earlier that data itself is raw, unanalyzed, unorganized. You can have if you can have Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, you can have Lycra, you can have Bitcoin, you can have number, you can have Naira in one place together, mined from all over the world. That's data. It does not make sense. It's just data. So really and truly, data itself cannot so much be analyzed except you understand that data. So people that understand that data, it might not be an information yet, but they understand the data, they will know how to structure their data. Of course, to them, it is now not unstructured data, it is data they know how to use. That is why when people mine the internet and they use robots and scrollers and now they use bots. They use bots to now go over the internet and mine all informations, email. They really don't have an idea. There are bots that can go and get all the emails. That's why some people put their email address in image form and plant it instead of writing it out. Now, if they go about and get all the emails in the world via the internet, really and truly, it does not matter. It doesn't make any sense. But now, an organization can now come around and say, we need data emails of almost everybody on Facebook. We need emails of almost everybody on this place. Now, that is when that data that you think is not important to that person who was just collecting becomes relevant and valuable. So he now starts sending out data based on the amount he has. I will send you 1,000 for such amount. I'll send it. Now makes sense. Because when somebody has approached you and they need your data, they want to convert that data to information. What's the information? To get your information and send out their products. It might be that all the emails can be students, can be adults, and people that don't have the money, and these people are sending out car information to all these emails. It doesn't matter to them. They know that 10%, how much they bought the data. If somebody buys 2 or 3 cars, it will cover for how much they have paid. Therefore, they don't care how stupid your data is, whether they just know you have email addresses. That's good enough for them. They just know they have currency names, all the Bitcoin, all the cryptocurrency, you have the names, all about 80 something of them, all the Naira value, Naira data, Naira dollars, you have all their names in the database, every currency. You'll be surprised. It might not make sense to you and analyze, and you don't even know how to restructure it. But some people will come to you when you say, I have all the symbols of currencies in the world, including all the cryptocurrency. Somebody will come to you and buy. So the use of data that is collected by that individual makes sense to that individual. Maybe not to you as an outsider, but it makes sense to that individual. So you don't now say, because it's unstructured, that how do you classify it? You don't classify it until you can convert it to information. When you know the information you want to convert it to, then you can classify the data. Basically, I'm speaking out of common sense, but I think it does make sense. Anybody can add to that. But yeah, I have worked in an environment where data comes in and we don't even understand the data. But over time, we don't lose the data. We keep the value data. It's not organized, it's not structured. But over time, it becomes very important because somebody will apply themselves to that data. So that's number one. That for me, I think then you'll be able to classify data. Or even if you don't classify it, it does not mean it's not important. That is my own, that's my input really.
That is good, sir.
Hello. Okay, thank you. And sorry, what's the second question?
No, I think you have answered it from your comments. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, sir. My own second question has
Yes,
not
sir.
been answered. Though I
Please
put
go ahead.
it there. The second
Please,
question.
just say it.
The second question is, what is the correlation between the classification of data stroke information and their sources or types? For example, primary, secondary, and tertiary sources of data and information.
Okay, so number one, your question, hold on, let me see it from this chart. It's a bit heavy for me, but I'm trying to Okay, so chat.
So-
So hold on.
Is
It says,
is-
just hold on.
Okay. Right.
I'm looking at it at the chat. Sorry.
Okay, good.
What's the correlation or relationship between data stroke information classification and their sources? That's types. What are the sources? What are primary source, secondary source, and tertiary source? Okay, I will answer half part. You will answer the other because you mentioned primary, secondary, or tertiary sources of data. It would be nice if you can explain that. I can look it up. But so number one, the correlation between data stroke information classification. From the beginning, we said data is a subset of information. If you understand your data, you will also, because as I said, data can be sensitive, even if it's a data, not yet converted to information. Once you understand what that data is for, and then you will be able to know the information you use them for. And therefore, it will enhance you to classify this data based on what you are going to use them for. So data is just there, but really information is what is classified. The data that is collected, making sense of that data, forms an information, and then that information management, not data management. Data is just bits and pieces. If you look at a computer, you have bytes of data, bits of data. You can have 8 bits, you can have 32 bits, you can have 64 bits of data. These are all strengths of data that is used to. So these are just data, but all these data are working together to provide information to the end user. And that's why in some areas, if you look at the OSI layer of machine, it starts from the machine layer, data layer, you have the IS, you have the TCC layer, you have the presentation application layer, presentation layer, etc. The 7 layers OSI layer. Now, data comes in from the bottom as a packet or a header. From many people that probably have done network communication to understand this. Data comes in from outside in packets and in hubs. It comes in breaking up, but they have headers. These headers now bring this data together to make information when it gets into the system. It is now that is presented into your HTML URL environment or your forms or your documents. But together, all that data, we have to form an information for you to know how you are going to classify it. What is the data going to be used for? Is it going to be used for legal purposes? That's the information part of it. If not, let it stay where it is. We cannot really classify it now until we know. So the interpretation of a classification of the data is based on the information that you're going to apply it to. Does that really make sense? So, hello?
Yes, I believe you have really done justice to the question.
I appreciate that, sir.
Yes, sir.
So the sources, which is primary, secondary, and tertiary, hopefully before we finish, somebody will answer that, but I don't have the knowledge to speak nonsense that I don't know. So I'll probably look it up. So yes.
It actually has to do with primary sources are those data that, you generate or you collect personally. While secondary has to do with those that you have to depend on other external sources for you to get. Then tertiary has to do with combining both. And when you talk about relationship and correlation between the classification, I think just like the resource person has mentioned, before you collect data in any form, you must have a primary objective for collecting those data. And that will really go a long way in determining how such data will be classified at the end of the day. So I think, I think that summarizes it all.
Thank you very much. So just to round up on that, our president has mentioned the primary sources are created as close to the original event, personal events. That's where you get the data from. Secondary sources are one step removed from that. So maybe outside. And tertiary sources are one further step removed from that. And it just shows how close you get. So whether, I guess primary now means data that you are aware of, that you know how it came to be. It's not data you buy. So all this data, really and truly, it doesn't really matter their sources. What matters is the application. And it's the application of this data that determines the information classification. Sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Nago, are you still there? Do we still have any further questions?
Thank you so much. But that I've checked, there are no other questions that is there. It's just someone is talking about what did you consider he was talking about what did you consider data? 1 second. He said here that relevant tools that can be used. If there are no other questions, that is there. So I think that is all regarding the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry, I've seen one. We talked about say good evening all. That was a good presentation. That's from Mr. Suru. He said, but where does data protection comes in here? I think you mentioned it during the presentation. So
Right, okay. So first of all, let's start from the policy environment, which is public government or private organizations. So how does data protection come about? Who puts it in place, right? Number one, people take people's data. For example, when you go online and you fill a form, if they don't have a new data protection guideline standard that has been defined, they can actually use your data for anything, your name, your information, which is an abuse, which is privacy. They are, how do you say, they are engaging and trusting themselves on your privacy. For them to do that, that's why you must have your own rights and privacy. Nobody can take your information and use it for whatever purpose they want to use it for. So you are being protected. And because you are being protected, acts were put in place for data protection laws. In fact, the President of IIM and ourselves and the leaders were at the regulation today. And he emphasized all these things about the importance of Data Protection Act, why they're putting policies in place, getting competence, the value of data. So these are the government, the head of government and leaders and experts. They really know this. So data protection is very important to protect you, to protect the information you give out there, to make sure that somebody does not take your credit card detail and sell them to hackers. Because if that is not placed in place, if data protection is not put in place, then InterSwitch can take your, sorry, I'm not saying that, sorry, not InterSwitch, not nobody, but financial gateways, payment gateways can take your credit card number details and sell it to anybody they want and make more money. And then in some areas, they will put a checkbox. Would you like us to share your information with partners? They understand the value of data. So data protection is important to protect you against misuse of your data, and also to put structure in place of using data. And there's so many information on the internet, even in these pages that we have put together, which you can look at as, again, why the challenges and the benefits and the importance of data classification and therefore protection of that particular data. And that is why we classify data as well for protection area. Which one are public? Send them out. It doesn't matter. Everybody knows this anyway. The retired Major General is the president of Nigeria. That is not secret. You can put that out. That's public information. You don't have to protect that. But there's some information that financially secret that helps the company to grow, IP property rights that has to be protected. Or else, we'll be living in the dark ages. So that is one of the importance, or the most important reason is to protect you and the organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that will be all for today. Thank you so much, Honorable First Lady.
So that's it. Any more
So-
questions? Should we go?
think
Okay,
we
sir.
have
Sorry, go on, sir.
I think there are other questions in the chat, and we have almost used up our time, but that was a fantastic one. So now I would like, first of all, our governing council members that are here to kindly introduce themselves to the house. I think I'll have our MVP here. Princess Wade Fafo is here. Princess, you are welcome. Please.
Thank you
kindly-
very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Anago, for that great moderation. The lecture was well moderated. My name is Princess Tiwalade Fakunda, the Vice President of this our great institute. I would like to
Yes, ma'am.
thank
Good evening, ma'am.
everyone for coming and to thank our great lecturer of today. I was lucky and opportune to see him this morning, and till afternoon, we were able to rub minds together. He's really an amiable person, and he has demonstrated it again in his presentation, because his presentation was excellent. It was an excellent delivery with perfect composure. He composed himself in the presentation. I was watching him, and we see the content was well researched, and apart from being well researched content, it was also superlative delivery. I say congratulations, sir, Mr. Femi
Opayinka. Thank you, ma'am.
Opayinka, Mr. Femi Opayinka. We are
Yes,
all blessed
ma'am.
by you, and we learned a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you, sir. I wish you more successes in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
I cannot but also thank our great president, our amiable president, Dr. Oyedokun, for putting all these things together with the togetherness of the ESCO. I want to thank you for working around the clock. I was also in your office today, and I saw the way you worked. You are a great leader. That's why I always used to tell you that you are really, really a motivational and inspirational leader. Because even for the few time I was with you in your office, I was able to learn a lot. And you are also a great encourager. I thank you. I pray the Lord will continue to strengthen you and all of us together. And together we will all take this great institute to the next level. For all our online participants, including me, you are all welcome. And I thank you very much for being very active, for being a friendly audience, a friendly virtual audience. I am grateful to you all. Mr. Anago, you are just too much. I thank you too. And I thank my other ESCO members. I wish you a restful and refreshing sleep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our amiable Vice President. Thank
you,
you, our distinguished facilitator for this month. We're really blessed having you. I believe a lot of participants have really gained a lot talking about data classification and the definition of data information and how they can actually go about classifying their data.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank all the online audience and want to encourage us, most especially those that are non-members, to join the Institute. This is an opportunity for you to join the Institute and also have the opportunity to learn best practices. And, just like the facilitator mentioned, we've got a pool of professionals in different data, information records, content, archives, knowledge management that you can actually tap into. And For those of us that belong to other disciplines, you also have the opportunity of learning best practices. And with II membership, you can actually switch career because there are lots of opportunities in the industry, and there will also be more and more opportunities. The data privacy, data protection initiative across the globe now is creating the platform and opportunities for individuals, to take advantage and specialize in different areas. And this can easily be achieved, by you belonging to the premier Information Management Institute, which is the Institute of Information Management. Thank you, everyone, for your audience. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for attending. We look forward to having you again next month with another exciting topic for discussion. And on that note, I want to hand over back to our able moderator, Mr. Nago, to take over from here. I wish us all a wonderful night's rest.
Okay, thank you so much, the President and the Vice. Okay, my own name, I'm also a Executive Council member in charge of PR and sponsorship for the Institute. So thank you so much, everyone. Please, you just have to turn on your cameras for us to have a group picture so that we can have that published. We'll be publishing the pictures on our various social media pages, please. Turn on your cameras so we can have the group picture. Please, Mr. President, hope you're ready, sir. I can capture the group pictures. Please turn on your cameras. No. Yes.
Station Channels Television during media. It seems like the ADM operations with Channels Television is that Q2 after. We're particularly
Most of us, our cameras are not on. Please, can we turn on our cameras, please? We can have the group pictures. So, the President, are you ready? Hello, sir. Have you taken? Krista, can you take these pictures? Okay, now we can end the session.
Thank you, everyone. You're covered already. We look forward to having you on our social media platform. Thank you all. Blessing, I can see you.